For this first exercise, we're going to use an array list to test to see if a word is a palindrome. And a palindrome is a word that is spelled the same forward and backward. For example, Bob is a palindrome. If you take the spaces out of a man, a plan, a canal, Panama, that is also a palindrome. So let's get started with this exercise. The first thing we need to do is build a method that will take a string and put it in an array list. We're going to write a method called build ArrayList, which we'll abbreviate AL. It will take a array list as an argument as well as a string, and then we will build the array list from the string by simply writing a loop that loops through the string and puts each character into the array list. So let's do that first. So we'll start with I equals 0, I less than the length of the word, plus I, then p word add word char at I. Now, that is not quite enough because the ArrayList class is looking for a string here, not just a char. So what we have to do is we have to concatenate an empty string to the character that we pull out of the word to make it into a string again. And that seems a little odd, but that's just one of those peculiarities of Java. So that method will build a array list out of a string. So that's our little helper method, build AL. Now we're ready to write the method that will test to see if it's a palindrome. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to take the palindrome and reverse it, and then compare the original palindrome that's in an array list with the reversed palindrome that's also in an array list, and see if they're the same. There's lots of ways to test if a palindrome. Another way to do it would be to compare the first letter with the last letter, the second letter with the next to last letter, and that's just a little bit complex for what I want to demonstrate here. So we're going to do the simpler way of just reversing the array list that has the word and then comparing the reversed word with the original word to see if it's a palindrome. So we're going to write a method which will be a predicate method called isPalindrome, and it simply will return true or false if a word is a palindrome. It's going to take an array list as its argument. The first thing we need to do is build a second array list, which will store the reversed word, so we're going to call it R word, and it's a empty array list to start with, of course, and we're getting ready to put the word into it. The way we do that is using a method called addAll. AddAll takes a array list as a argument, or actually any collection, and adds the contents of that array list into the original or the calling array list. So if we write our word add all word, all the elements of word are going to be put into our word. So that will give us our array list of letters that we're now going to reverse, and we do that by calling a method from the collection class named reverse that takes a array list or any collection and reverses its contents, so that what's first is last and what's last is first. So now we have word and R word, and we can compare them. The way we compare them is we loop through the contents, starting at 0, less than the size of either R word or word. We'll just work with word. And then we compare. The way we want to do this is we want to compare each letter to see if they're the same. If they're not the same at any point in the loop, then we want to return false, because clearly it's not a palindrome if any character position doesn't match. So the way we write that is we write if not R word get I dot equals word dot get I. And that looks a little funny, but we have to use the equals method because we're working with string objects. So here we're going to return false if any letter doesn't equal the corresponding letter in the other array list. And then when we're done with the whole loop, then if we haven't returned false, then we'll return true, stating that the word is a palindrome. And that's all there is to it. So to review what we did here is we created a new array list, called it R word. Then we took the contents of word, the argument to the method, stored them in R word. Then we reversed the contents to make word be reversed, calling R word as the argument there. Then we looped through each array list, testing to see if any two corresponding characters did not match. If so, we return false because it can't be a palindrome. Otherwise, if we get through the whole loop and haven't returned false, then we return true and leave the method because we went through the whole loop and all the words matched, so the word must be a palindrome. Let's test our method up here. Let's create a scanner object. Let's prompt the user to enter a word, and then we'll say palindrome equals input.nextLine. Then we'll say if is palindrome system out print line palindrome is a palindrome. That sounds kind of funny. Else system out print line palindrome is not a palindrome. Semicolon, and we're finished. All right, so let's see if it works. Knowing good and well we might have an error here someplace. Clear the screen. Java C, Chap 11, Part 9.java. We forgot to build the word, so we just left something out. We need an array list, P. Then we're going to build AL with P and palindrome. Then we're going to change our argument from palindrome to P right there. File save. Let's try it again. There we go. Forgot to prompt the user. That's okay. We'll do it this time without a prompt. Let's try hello. Hello is not a palindrome. Okay, now let's add a prompt. Enter a word to test. Okay. Here we go. Save it. Compile and run. This time let's try Bob. Bob is a palindrome. Very good. Let's try another one. A man, a plan, a canal, Panama. You can look at that real quick to see that it is a palindrome. A man, a plan, a canal, Panama is a palindrome, so our method works. So what you've learned in this exercise is how to use a data structure to organize data to make it easier to solve a problem. We could have just used the string and compared the first letter with the second letter, then the second letter with the next to last letter, and so on and so forth, but that solution is a bit complex. It's a lot easier just to take a word, put it in an array list, reverse the array list, and then compare the two letter by letter. So for the next exercise, we're going to look at how to write a maximum method that will return the largest value in a data set stored in an array list. That's similar to the minimum method we wrote earlier in the course, but this time we'll do it for the maximum, and that'll be in the next lesson.